Hey Gardener, Taylor here from the Community Garden Podcast. Before we get into today's episode, I just want to provide you with some housekeeping items before we get started. If you're new to the podcast, every week, every 2 weeks, the beginning of the podcast gets updated. So the information that I'm delivering to you right now is relevant and will be removed when it's no longer relevant. So if you've already heard this, if you're binge watching or binge listening, fast forward to about 5 or 6 minutes and we'll launch into the actual episode. So for today, it is currently the week of October 20th. And for folks in the Northern Hemisphere or for folks who are in similar zones, I'm in zone 6B and my first frost date is supposed to be early October. It's now October 20th and we still haven't actually had a frost, but the plants are starting to be damaged from the cold. We're getting about -3 degrees Celsius overnight right now, at least tonight. So we're pretty much done in the garden now. If you haven't had a chance, go into your garden and just remove. Actually, you could technically leave your entire garden, but if you're planning to remove anything from your garden, go ahead and snip the plants at the base. Don't actually pull them up out of the soil as long as they weren't diseased. You can go ahead and let them break down into the soil, and it also helps with better water access for next year, getting water down into the soil, and will help a little bit with soil erosion. If your plants were diseased, pull them out fully. You can also leave all of your plants over winter. You do not need to take them out of your garden. Don't let anyone make you think so. So now that we're done with the season, there's likely nothing else coming out of your garden. I still have a few loofahs, some flowers still going, a couple of small things, but for the most part, the season is over, folks. So my suggestion to you over the next couple of weeks, this will probably be the last time I update this until realistically November, December. I would really love for you to make notes about your gardening season. Please, please, please journal. Write down the things that you learned this year. Write down the things that you want to do differently next year. Write your observations down. Write your questions down. Write all your ideas down. Spring you will thank winter you, okay? Please. Also, as you're out in your garden mourning its loss, if you see any seeds that have matured, you can go ahead and pop them off your plants. Marigolds are a really fun way to save seeds. You'll wait for the seed heads to, become dry and crunchy, and they usually turn black. You can go ahead and pop them off. You can store them in a paper bag. There's lots of fun plants to pull seeds off of. Snapdragons, the little heads turn brown, and then they have little holes in the top, and you can flip it over and shake the seeds into your hand. Another fun one is coriander or cilantro. It's very obvious when the seeds are ready, so take a peek at the plants that are still in your garden, see if you can pull any seeds off them. Also, this is for anyone listening to this podcast. If you've ever thought about organizing a community garden, requesting a community garden in whatever area you live in, now is the time to start thinking about that if you have any sort of winter break. So right now, we're not going to be gardening now until March, April. So we do all of our prep work during the winter months. So this is when we take new garden requests. This is when we assess new sites. We discuss partnerships with different organizations. So if this is something that you have been personally wanting to do or your organization has been wanting to do, now is the time to start prepping. Okay, let's talk about some local activities. So these are folks who are in Southern Ontario, you live in Brantford, Brant County, Hamilton, Haldimand, Norfolk, and you want to get involved with our organization. We have a couple of things coming up that I want to put on your radar. So we are participating in the Brantford Santa Claus Parade. November 30th, we are having another parade float. Last year, we had a really fun 50-foot parade float. One of our volunteers, Ken, built a massive greenhouse on the float. I made a bunch of vegetable costumes. They were like sandwich board costumes. It was so much fun. The float definitely was DIY, but it was so cute and we really had a blast doing it together. So we're going to be doing it again this year. If you want to participate, our parade committee is going to be meeting on October 20th in the evening virtually, and you can get that link from me by emailing grow@egcgbrant.ca, or you can take a peek at our show notes page for the podcast and click the Contact Us button, and that would be the communitygardenpodcast.ca. So Santa Claus Parade, come join us. You get to dictate how much time you can give. You do not need to have any experience. Next thing, so this is very exciting. A couple of years ago, we hosted an Earth Day Community Garden Building Festival. Nope, Earth Day Community Building Festival, and we're going to be kind of re-envisioning that festival as a garden festival this year located at the Greenhouse and Learning Center. It'll be the grand opening. So that'll be happening in June of 2025. It's now all hands on deck to get this festival planned. So if you want to volunteer with us on the committee on the day of, whatever the case is, email grow@egcgbrant.ca or go to the show notes page. We're also looking for organizations who want to participate in an educational way or, have some sort of offering day of. So if you work in the horticulture, green space, environmental, gardening world, and you have something educational to offer or something of value to offer during the festival and you want to promote the organization or you want to participate, reach out, please. If you have ever thought about joining the board of directors for Eagle Ground Community Gardens, we will be having our annual general meeting in January. This is just something for you to start thinking about now. We're always recruiting for director positions as well as for committee lead positions. So I will update this when we have the final date, but our AGM's in January, and just start thinking maybe you want to get involved on the back end. We also are hosting a tree planting event at the new greenhouse site on November 2nd at 10 a.m. So you can come. Please ensure you are wearing closed-toed shoes, although it's a little too cold to be wearing sandals anyways, and consider bringing a shovel and some drinking water. We're going to be planting a permaculture orchard. This will give you a good opportunity to see the greenhouse, to see the park before maybe other folks have been able to. Also, Belonging Brant, we mentioned this in episode 8 with Armanda Lambert. Belonging Brant is hosting the ABCD Symposium for 2025 in May, and we are currently planning for the symposium. We're looking for community members to come join our committee. So if this is something that interests you, you want to learn more about ABCD, asset-based community development, shoot me a message. And finally, for my organizations that are listening, I have a couple of recommendations for you. If you haven't gotten to it yet, episode 9 with Roger Doran is about seed money. It's a fundraising platform for community gardens. It is a global platform. Please check out that episode and register for a seed money campaign. Your registration has to be in by November 12th, and then the campaign for anyone listening runs from November 15th to December 15th. And look into all the campaigns that are running and please consider donating. There is an Ontario Agriculture Infrastructure Grant due October 31st. If you've ever thought about building a greenhouse with your community garden organization, this may be a grant opportunity for you. And if you just Google Ontario Agriculture Infrastructure, it should come up. It's due by October 31st. There's also a grant right now through the Ontario Trillium Foundation. It's their Grow Grant. It's due by November 4th. And this allows various organizations to sustain their operations. It has nothing to do with gardening. But if you have been looking for an operations or a programming grant, this may be the grant for you. So I just wanted to share some of these pieces with you. I apologize. This is a little bit longer than normal. It's because I love to talk. Yeah, we're at 8 minutes. So I'm going to let you go. We're going to get into the episode now. I hope you enjoy it. As always, you can always reach out to us at podcast@egcgbrant. You can reach out to us through the show notes page at the communitygardenpodcast.ca. Email me, message me, send us a message on social media. I'm always happy to answer questions and help you out. Okay, let's get started.
Hey gardener, you're listening to the Community Garden Podcast. I'm your host, Taylor. In this space, we'll dig into the dirt with local gardeners of all skill levels to share tips, tricks, and stories from our gardening adventures. Let's get growing. Hey gardeners, you are listening to the Community Garden Podcast. I'm your host, Taylor, and we're so excited to be offering our first official episode of the Community Garden Podcast. I'm personally very excited. This project has been a long time coming. We're probably 6 months in now. I do want to make a note before I get started. Fun fact, this isn't my real voice. I have been sick now for almost 5 weeks. It's really delayed this podcast project, and I decided to say, I'm going to move on anyways, and I'm going to start recording, regardless of what I sound like. So don't be surprised if the intro to this episode and how I sound now is very different. I'm a little bit sick. So incredibly excited to be bringing this episode to you. This is our first official episode of the podcast and one of the most amazing conversations I've ever had. So today we interviewed Jill Pye. She's the Expressive Arts teacher at Crossing All Bridges Learning Center. Jill was so incredibly fun to speak to. She is bubbly. We have very similar interests, and I suspect that her and I could quite literally talk all day. We joked that maybe we may be doing, a part 2 just because we loved chatting so much. It was so much fun. I'm not going to give too much away about who Jill is and her background because we really do talk about it during the interview itself. But I do want to give you some background information on Crossing All Bridges. They are an amazing resource here in Brantford. They service adults who have aged out of the school system and provides programming, education, social opportunities during a day program that they operate. So this includes culinary skills and nutrition, community and culture, expressive arts, healthy active living, and other really valuable life skills. They also do things like summer camps and evening social activities. Crossing All Bridges also runs a social enterprise called Shredding All Barriers. It's an on-site organization that provides employment opportunities to adults living with developmental disabilities. So they provide shredding services for sensitive documents in Brantford and Brant County. And I've put information about them into the show notes. You can go take a peek, and maybe if you do have some shredding needs, you can reach out to them and throw some business their way. During this episode, Jill and I chat about accessible gardening solutions, which is amazing, especially because a lot of our community gardens, the garden beds that we have are only about 12 inches. Some of them are 22 inches, but we're definitely working on providing more accessible options within our community gardens. We also talk about the dangers of growing hot peppers. We talk about garden pests, including earwigs, squash bugs, creative ways to use your garden harvest. So we did talk about a lot of recipes during this interview, and there's lots of recipes in the show notes, so you can go take a peek at those. We also talk about an intro to cut flowers, which is a question that I get all the time. So you can go take a peek at some of that information if you end up needing to, also in the show notes. So Jill is actually one of our garden champions. Jill runs the community garden at Crossing All Bridges, which is a new site that we've started supporting in 2024. They already had the infrastructure in place, and Jill, as the Expressive Arts teacher, really wanted to get a community garden going in a place that was accessible by the surrounding community as well. We met at a workshop, which we'll talk about in the interview, and then from there we were able to plan support for Crossing All Bridges. So I went and visited for a very lovely tour and met some of the staff members there and kind of learned more about what they do. And then I want to say April. No, it was early May. Early May, the Crossing All Bridges team and a lot of students actually came to Earl Haig Community Garden to pick up an insane amount of compost. And it was honestly so much fun. We spent about half an hour shoveling compost. There was probably 15 of us. I'll throw some pictures in the show notes. The whole team, they shoveled this massive trailer full of compost, and they took it back to the garden to kind of revitalize the soil that was in there. And then of course we donated plants and seeds to them to get the garden growing, and it's looking really, really amazing. So you'll have to tune in to this episode, to this interview, to kind of hear some of the amazing things that Jill and I talk about. We dive into Jill's background and her connection to nature as a child. We do talk about accessibility and some other fun tips and tricks that you can use in your garden. Okay, let's dig in. Hello, Jill. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So do you want to explain where we're sitting and where we're located right now?
All right. So my name is Jill Pye. I'm the Expressive Arts instructor at Crossing All Bridges. So we are currently in our lounge area at Crossing All Bridges Learning Center on 65 Sky Acre Drive in Brantford. So Crossing All Bridges was born in 2003 when 4 local mothers noticed there weren't many affordable or accessible options for their children with special needs who outgrew the public school system. So fast forward 20 years, and we are now an adult learning center focused on teaching life skills, encouraging personal development, and fostering community within and outside of our offered programming. So that's where we're sitting right now.
It's amazing. So we're in the lounge right now.
Mm-hmm.
It has a nice carpet. This is a well-insulated room. I'm so happy to be in here. And there's these big, bright windows that are looking out towards the road, and there's trees and plants and all types of things. So this is a really nice space
space. You guys gave me a tour, I don't know, I want to say like 3 months ago, maybe?
Yeah, I feel like the last little while has been a blur as to time.
Oh, yeah.
But you did come here for a tour.
At some point before the season started.
Yes.
So
and
probably like in April.
Yeah, something like that. I feel like we've been talking for a while.
Yeah,
when
that's
was
true.
that meeting, that first meeting?
With us or with the like garden champions?
When we were at Farm Boy.
Oh, yeah.
That's when we first met.
Boy.
Yeah.
Okay, so for folks who are listening, in February of 2024, Eagle Ground hosted a garden planning workshop at Goodness Me
it
here
was
in Brantford.
Goodness
yes,
Me,
they have a
yes.
wonderful classroom there. And yes, you had come. That's when we first met, and we chatted a little bit about crossing all bridges. Okay, so that's when we
Yes,
met, and then we must have done a tour for the facility in like March or April.
I think it was like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. We've
Yeah.
reorientated ourselves. So here at the facility, you guys had kind of had a garden operating at some point, and then you've recently kind of revitalized them. Do you want to go into a little bit of background on the gardening program here?
Sure, I will definitely do my best. I am a newer employee, so I will do my best to recap based on what I know. So we do have 6 garden beds back there. It's called the Peace Garden, which I really love the name because it kind of encapsulates what we want from the gardening experience for our participants. But last year there were renovations going on, including this lovely lounge. So the programming had been moved to Lions Park. So the garden didn't get much use last year, and it was a priority for the center to use them this year. So when we were talking about how we were going to do that, the garden beds are looking a little bit, they have a little bit of wear and tear on them. So we were kind of brainstorming as to how we were going to approach the gardening now, especially with our renovated facilities, what we want from the garden for our participants and their families. And that's when we came across Equal Grounds, and we had talked about, well, maybe we can reach out and see if what you're all about and whether or not it would be something we can pursue to make the most of that space. So right now the space is definitely functional, but we have bigger visions for it in the future. We have, as you've seen through the tour and just you've been here multiple times now, we have a huge green space.
Yeah, you do.
And
This used to be an old school, right?
It was,
Yeah.
and it does operate now very similar to a school. So we run 5 daily programs, and we just want to make the most of our green space, and that's kind of what we're looking to do in the future.
It's amazing. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
So now you guys currently have 4x4. There's 6 4x4 gardens back there.
Yeah.
What do you guys have growing?
All right. So there is, we started with some different plants that you generously provided. Not all of them survived.
Oh, no.
Because, so we have a employment opportunity here called Shredding Barriers. And what we do is the participants, they are employed there, and we shred documents there. And in the back, there are lots and lots of shredded paper piles, which are perfect for baby bunnies.
Oh,
So
yes.
there were some baby bunnies born in our paper shred piles, and they very much enjoyed your generous donation of plants.
You know what? Somebody got to enjoy it. It's not like they died from lack of care. Somebody came through and was able. That was a tasty treat for them. So it was probably worth it.
And they were so cute, and they're doing great. We see them quite often, but the marigolds and the peppers did not make it.
Okay.
We did pick up a few other produce and flowers as well. So right now we have nasturtium flowers, which are doing amazing.
Did you know that the leaf and the flower is edible?
I did. So we are actually looking
spicy like radishes.
Yes. So actually, while we're on that note, the culinary program. So far we have harvested quite a few kale. Like the kale has been phenomenal.
Nice.
In that space. So we made kale chips. We did make some pesto that included kale as well, and the basil that has been growing really well as well. So we're hoping to make nasturtium jelly, which I don't know if you've ever had it, but it's so good.
Is it spicy? Like, does that zip come through?
It definitely
with the
does.
Yeah.
It's kind of like red pepper jelly.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know?
Red pepper jelly, it is a little bit hot, but yeah, for anyone who hasn't tried nasturtium leaves or flowers, it's very much like a radish. It's got that bite that a radish has, where it's gonna kind of prick your tongue. It's not hot, but it's spicy.
Zesty. Yeah,
it's so hard to explain.
Yeah.
If you ever have an opportunity, we'll put a photo of nasturtiums in the comments and maybe a link to how you can identify them. Definitely try giving them a taste. Don't put the whole thing in your mouth. Last year, I ran a little gardener's program at Earl Haig with one of the participants here, with her mom and the participant. And we were encouraging the kids to try the nasturtiums, and I popped an entire flower in my mouth in front of like 20 kids, and I was like holding back tears. I also did the same thing with a chive blossom. It was within the same week, and the kids just couldn't stop laughing at me because I was just putting things in my mouth that I really should have been more careful with. But I wanted to show them that these things are edible and that they were safe, but then like I couldn't handle it.
Yeah, I feel like that would have a different effect, and they're like, maybe I should be more careful.
Yeah, and then I was like, oh, guys, I ate a little too much. Go easy. It was an opportunity for them to learn. But yeah, anyways, nasturtiums, delicious. What else do you have growing?
Yes, so we have cucumbers. We just harvested our first cucumber. So I think they ate that today, which was, it looked nice and healthy. Our tomatoes are just doing phenomenal in this weather.
Southern Ontario, we're having a really good season. Everyone's tomatoes are beautiful.
They're so beautiful, and we're very excited for them to ripen, but we're also hoping to make fried green tomatoes as well.
Oh, yeah, delicious.
So good.
Yeah, we have one garden in particular on Jonathan Road. Tomatoes don't ripen there because they all get picked as green, because there's a lot of new to Canada folks that are used to utilizing green tomatoes. So it's really cool to kind of see how something that we think to allow ripen and use in our own ways, there's an entire community and culture that will pick them significantly earlier and use them in a variety of dishes. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge benefit in community gardening, because then you learn how to use produce in different ways that you may not have been exposed to.
Yes.
So I know for me, I just it's always a learning experience, no matter how many times you've done your own gardens or participated in other community gardens. Even, just our community here of participants, they'll be like, oh, I like to eat this. And it's something that I've never personally cooked or used in that way. And so it's just kind of is a circle of knowledge that never ends, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
that's amazing.
cool.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So your tomatoes are doing good.
Fantastic.
Anything fun in there that you've never grown before?
Trying to think. I'm pretty I grew up with a chartered herbalist as a mom, so I am quite familiar with gardening personally. So everything that is in the garden right now, I've had some experience with. So like I said, our marigolds did not survive, but our beans and our peas are doing well.
Yay. I love peas. They're probably my favorite.
They are delicious. Yeah. These ones are doing so great. They do not make it to our culinary program because they just get eaten on the way.
That's what happens in my garden too. They don't ever make it into the house because I finish them by the time I get to the door.
Oh, they're so good. And this year, I again, with the rain, I feel like peas are doing great. The beans are doing great.
Do any of the program participants, are they taking a particular interest in any part of the garden, anything specifically that's being grown?
I think it's mostly, so our Expressive Arts and culinary programs have taken the lead on caring for the garden. But I will say, so our Wellness Wednesday program has been taking advantage of just the space out there. So I think gardening is something that intrigues everybody, and especially when you see, I'm not sure, you said you saw from far away that the plants are doing really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't gotten close yet.
Yeah, well, the tomatoes are definitely something that draws people over because they are just I mean, they're overgrown at this point. I could definitely use some, advice as to how
Some
to
trimming.
prune them, I think, because they're huge.
Hey, it's me, real quick. Here we talk about pruning tomatoes, so I just wanted to give you a little bit more information if you've never pruned your tomatoes before. It's gonna entirely depend on the variety of tomato that you're growing, but regardless of variety, I heavily, heavily, heavily encourage you, as you're trellising the tomato, to actually trim up the foliage from the base of the soil up the stalk so that no foliage is touching the ground. If you have exposed soil, which most folks do who are growing in gardens, unless you're like me and you love mulch, when those leaves touch the soil, any bacteria, any fungus, any pests or diseases that are currently living in the soil have significantly better access to your plant. So regardless of what tomato you're growing, please trim the foliage up off the soil. Now, some folks will prune off any suckers of the plant. I'm going to put a picture of the suckers in the show notes. But essentially, if you were to picture the tomato, you have your main stem, and then you have your stems that come off of, or not your stems, your branches that come off of the stems. Imagine you have a 90-degree angle between the stem and the leaves. In between, in that 90-degree angle, sometimes you get another like sucker or another come on, Taylor, another branch growing out of there. They call those suckers. Some people actually prune those off because that is like a brand new tomato plant. Some folks swear that if you leave the suckers on, it's going to produce more fruit. Some people will completely snip them off because they say it takes away from the fruit being produced by the main plant. I don't care what you do. I actually leave my suckers. And this does not apply if you are growing Roma tomatoes. That's kind of a quick overview of how to prune your tomatoes. Make sure you're using clean, sanitized snippers, and do not make sure you sanitize them between tomatoes so you don't bring any diseases with you. Okay, bye.
The participants are just drawn to that space because I think when you're surrounded by plants, it's just such a calming sensory experience. So I'm not sure if the right answer is that anyone in particular has been drawn to it. I think everyone has been taking an interest in the garden this year. I've taken the participants out during my own classes, but even just in between, we've done our book club out there. And I think there's just something about being surrounded by life that, even it enhances art, it enhances reading, it enhances social experiences. We've all sat out there for Zumba. We did Zumba in the garden.
Oh, I love that.
So I think it's just, it's something that everyone's been taking advantage of in different ways.
That's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
For folks who are listening, there's also a yoga in the park class at Earl Hague every Monday at 7 p.m. This will probably be released early August, so that's running until September 9th. So if you loved the idea of movement in the garden, you can come join us at Earl Hague. Jill, you can come join us too if you want.
I might take you up on that because I definitely love being outside. And
so nice.
I think something about exercising outside is, it's much more... I suppose I don't know what that word I'm looking for, but it doesn't seem as terrible.
I love that.
I'm not an exercise person,
Yes, I see
but
what
I
you're
could
saying.
definitely see myself doing yoga in the garden.
It's almost like we're biologically designed to exist outside, and
Yes.
way back when we would do exercise, it would be in the form of labor, and it was done outside too. So it's
Yeah.
almost like our brains are pulling back on that.
And I think there is that, that dopamine or serotonin release when you're outside, even if you're doing something that is not particularly enjoyable, like labor or as some people enjoy exercise. I'm not one of those people, but I do find it more enjoyable if I'm outside. That's just like I love to walk.
Fun fact, I'm the exact opposite. I love exercise. I lift weights. I hate walking.
Interesting. Like that is very opposite.
I have to tell my partner, walking very much helps with my mental health, especially if I have like anxiety before bed. And I'll tell my partner, I need you to force me to go for a walk tonight with the dogs. And I just don't like it. I think I get bored. I get restless. I get bored. If I'm listening to a podcast or something, it's a little bit more enjoyable for me. But it's funny. I'm quite literally the opposite.
Yeah,
I want to be
that's
like
very
holed up in a
different.
gym with my music, the like least
Interesting.
natural solution. So strange. And I'm a huge outdoor person,
Well,
obviously.
yeah, it's not
live
only, it's like we were talking a little bit earlier, you have lots of hobbies and lots of interests and you kind of fell into this career, which seems really perfect for you.
Mm-hmm. I enjoy it. That's for sure.
Yeah. I've never seen you without a smile on your face.
Oh, thanks. I got told that the other day, and I was like, really? They're like, yeah, you're literally always laughing. We never not hear you laughing.
Yeah.
I was like, I've never heard that before, and you're now the second person to say that. So thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Take that in.
Who doesn't want to be a smiley person, right?
But I think that's, it contributes to the overall experience that I've had personally with Equal Grounds. You are a huge part of that because, you were the first person I met when I went to Goodness Me.
Yeah, that's true.
And I've worked with you, when we went and picked up the mulch and the plants and everything like that. Like, to me, you're just this smiling face that I picture when I think of Equal Ground. So even when you're talking about, oh, do you want to participate in this podcast? Just everything that you do seems to have this like light, airy life to it. So I'm
thank
like,
you.
Of course, I would love to talk with you.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for sharing. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So if we want to backtrack just a little bit,
Sure.
I would love to hear more about your gardening background, your history with gardening. I know you mentioned your mom.
Mm-hmm.
You grew up in that environment. So if you want to maybe dive into, your personal background a little bit, if you're willing.
Yeah. I'm trying to gather my thoughts a little bit. So I spent a lot of my teenage years in Muskoka. So a lot of my gardening experience is more, I suppose, wilderness influenced. So a lot of like foraging. My mom is just so full of knowledge. And she also has this way of sharing it with people that's very accessible. She fostered my love for nature in general. So I'm a very whimsical person. My favorite book series is Lord of the Rings. So growing up in the woods, I don't know if that was a good encouragement for me to just live in this fantasy realm. But when I think of gardening and my experience with gardening, it is very whimsical for me. And right now at my own home, my children engage in it as well. So my whole deck, this year we decided to do pots instead because of just my schedule. It's very difficult to do like the maintenance for gardening within the ground.
Of course.
Just with weeds and pests and everything. So I thought it would just be easier to do pots this year. And we started all of our seedlings in like paper towels. We do the wet paper towel method.
Yep.
And then we plant them downstairs and we have like little grow light kind of things. So we started all our seedlings from there. So my husband and I, we really love hot peppers. We make our own hot sauce. So this year we are experimenting with a lot of different types of hot peppers, like chocolate habaneros and peach ghost peppers and things like that we ordered specially. So that's something that we are experimenting with right now as to what grows best in our climate and just the realm of hot pepper growing it's a whole hobby in itself.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
But so my whole deck is just surrounded in pots of plants. So we've got all the hot peppers on one side because I wasn't sure about cross-pollination, and I don't want. Last year we didn't realize that even touching the pepper plants can be a sensation. You can.
Yeah.
They are spicy themselves.
Hopefully you had gloves on.
Yes. So we have been learning those kind of things, keeping them away from the pets and the kids and things like that. So just, process learning. But then we have a side that's like Swiss chard, peas, basil, like a lot of different herbs. We're experimenting with the companion planting. So my basil's planted with my tomatoes and, we did do radishes this year. So just trying to figure out what works together. But so last night we were, my daughter's in charge of the salad. She's 6 years old. And so she went out, picked Swiss chard, spinach, and she used a mortar and pestle to mush up the basil, and she made up her own salad dressing with olive oil and
my goodness.
things like that. So I just love seeing my little alchemists outside, participating the way that I did when I was a kid. My mom gave me those opportunities, so I'm really excited I can give them to them as well.
Hey, it's me again. A really quick, fun activity if you have kiddos around. If you take pretty much any type of seed and you put it in a wet paper towel and you slide it into a paper bag, if you leave it for a couple of days, you have the wonderful, wonderful opportunity to watch that seed germinate and watch its root systems develop. Kids absolutely love this. And in my opinion, this is best done with a bean seed. So definitely give it a try. It's a lot of fun. Even you can do a quick Google search and there'll be other opportunities as well.
That's amazing. I love that. I love it. Did your mom grow anything specific? I know you said that you were kind of exposed to a lot of different types of plants. Was she a vegetable gardener? Was she, a medicine gardener? Was there anything specific that she loved to grow?
Well, she actually still, she definitely loves to grow natural medicine plants. She loves to, she still lives out in the woods. So we did a lot of mushroom foraging. She's very knowledgeable. That's not something that you can really do without knowledge safely.
Yep.
So that's something we've always been very exposed to. I remember very vividly when I was a child, we went out we were in London. We went into the Carolinian forest looking for puffball mushrooms for our dinner, and we found some. She cooked them up in butter, and it's just very fond memories in that way. So right now she does grow specifically like medicinal herbs and things like that. That's kind of a special interest of hers. She always gifts us like homemade products made with things that she grows or extracts oils from. So I'm very lucky in that way. But the thing that really always stuck out to me was lavender. Wherever we lived, she always grew lavender plants. And whenever I smell lavender, I always think of her. Ugh. And so lavender is something that I really love to cook with. My kids and I, we make lavender cookies, lavender lemonade, even putting it in the bath and that kind of stuff. It's definitely my favorite, and I think it's because it's so nostalgic for me.
Of course. Yeah.
So that's something that I will always carry with me, I think, is the love of lavender.
Mm-hmm. I'll have to share my lavender blueberry cheesecake recipe with you.
Please.
When I worked in the food industry, that was something that I actually baked with lavender a lot. I loved it.
Oh.
I don't like baking with rose, but I love baking with lavender.
I can see why rose is such a... It's like a delicate and strong flavor at the same time.
It's I can't explain this. It's soft. I find the flavor very soft. And have you ever drank Fiji water?
I have.
It makes your mouth soft. That's the only way I can explain it.
I totally know.
Rose does the same thing.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, it's
but
weird.
It's like a subtle flavor, but then also it's overpowering.
Yeah.
In a weird way.
Yeah.
It's
odd.
Yeah. I do love roses for other things like salves and things like that, but it's definitely a tricky edible ingredient, I think, depending on your experience with it.
Mm-hmm. So I want to ask this question twofold in two different directions.
Sure.
Any gardening hurdles that you faced in your own personal garden, especially now that this year you're container gardening, have you had any issues that you've had to kind of get through with the containers themselves or within your garden this year, your personal garden?
Yeah, I mean, here it's mostly just figuring out scheduling wise in terms of watering.
And that's for like crossing all bridges,
yeah,
right? Yep.
I would love to have a more accessible water source.
Mm-hmm.
The hose works great. We do have a water hookup and everything like that. So it's not so much a complaint, but it would be nice to have a closer water source just in terms of time management and accessibility.
Of course.
So I think it has been nice that it's been raining so much. So I have been grateful for that. And just, I think for me, I don't know what they are, but I've noticed a lot of these beetle bugs on things.
What color are they?
They're like, kind of like an amber type color. It's like a beetle that I haven't come across before.
Maybe we'll have to, if I pop out there
You'll
after,
probably
maybe
see
I'll
them.
see them. Yeah, I'm curious to know what they are. Amber-colored beetle. And are they on any specific plant?
The pepper plants, they have quite a few holes in them.
Okay,
And the beans as well.
We're gonna go out and
Sure.
and look later, and then if
I don't know if
I
they're
do
the
some
culprit,
sleuthing,
but yeah.
I'll either add the information to the show notes or I'll put it in my intro so folks who are listening can maybe learn from this as well.
Sure.
Okay, I looked into this and I actually suspect that the bug that Jill is talking about is called a soldier beetle, which is actually really beneficial for the garden. So it does act as a pollinator, and the adults will actually eat aphids and the larvae of other pests. So they're actually really beneficial to the garden. I have not gotten to the bottom of what's eating her pepper plants. I suspect it is earwigs, because the earwigs were really bad this year in July. If anyone else has experienced this on their pepper plants, shoot us a message. I'd be really interested to hear your experience.
I have a terrible memory in some regards, so maybe they're not amber, maybe or maybe they're not beetles, but they're these bugs I haven't really come across before.
I'm curious. This is my first year that I've struggled with squash bugs.
Oh, interesting.
So I've now learned they're massive. For anyone who's never seen squash bugs, they're like 3/4 to an inch big. They're dark.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of intricate details on them that you can see. And when you squish them, they stink.
Interesting.
And they lay these amber-colored eggs on your squash leaves, so they're very easy to identify. Sometimes if I can, I'll brush the eggs off, but I've had to snip some of the leaves off, and then when I see the bugs, I'll go and squish them. They're massive, but it's my first year I've ever experienced squash bugs before in my own garden. Yeah, have you ever had them before?
I feel like I have. I have come across a few bugs that I'm not quite sure identifying wise, but I have grown pumpkins.
Yeah.
So I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they're really loving the pumpkin plants. They've been kind of staying away from like the squash. It's been more the pumpkin side.
Yeah.
So it's been quite manageable because the bugs are so big. You can find them really easily.
Yeah, they're much easier than smaller bugs. Last year, the earwigs were nuts.
I would argue that this year it's worse.
Do you really think?
I've had so many complaints from people.
I had so much trouble with the earwigs last year.
I would say earwigs have been brought up in every interview I've done this season
Interesting.
so far. Yeah, they're so bad.
See, I haven't had as many as I had last year, this year. And I don't know if it's because I am container planting.
Maybe.
But
That's actually a very good point.
Yeah, it could be that.
I'm finding they're like, we also have ducks this year. I don't know if that's made a difference.
Maybe.
But they're like all over my patio furniture. They're in the house all the time. Every time I bring in a harvest, like I do a lot of cut flowers. So every time I bring in a cut flower harvest, they're literally everywhere.
That
and my
makes
dogs like to
sense.
chase them. So I have to like bring the dogs into the kitchen to come chase the earwigs. I can't get away from them right now.
See, I want to get into cut flowers.
Oh,
I think
so easy.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, because
I would
I've been seeing it
recommend-
everywhere, and it's very appealing to me.
Yeah. I would recommend, what I did was, this is my third year doing cut flowers. Every year I just built on a little bit more. And every year I've chosen kind of a more intermediate or advanced cut flower to try and grow, and I've been successful. So anyone who's listening that's interested in starting in cut flowers, I'll put some information in the show notes. But I would recommend starting with zinnias, sunflowers, snapdragons, and maybe bachelor buttons. Just do those ones.
Okay.
And then, over the years, I've added calendula, aster.
I want to do calendula.
Oh, calendula is so much fun. It's so easy to grow.
Yeah.
And we have lots of seeds. EcoGround has lots of seeds. I can even give you some for the garden here if you want.
I would love that.
Yeah, calendula is amazing both for cut flower and for medicinal purposes, and it grows in abundance, and it self-seeds really easily.
It's great for tea.
Yes. Yeah.
I love calendula tea.
We sometimes I take my echinacea for my cut flowers. I went and did so good. I went and did a workshop yesterday morning at the Boys and Girls Club, and I didn't have a lot of time with them, and I was humming and hawing about what I could be doing because it's youth between 10 and 12, and I was with them last year, so we've already did a pretty big intro into gardening. So I actually brought all my cut flowers and we made bouquets. So that was a lot of fun. They really liked that.
love
But
that.
once you kind of get into cut flowers, they don't take up a lot of space, and as long as you are continuously harvesting, all of these are cut and come again, so they'll continue to bloom, and they bloom through the whole season. So yeah, I've also done, have you ever heard of Lysanthius?
I'm not sure.
So Lysanthius, it almost looks like a rose. Again, I'll put a photo in the show notes and I'll send you
Yeah.
one. Beautiful, but so incredibly difficult to grow.
Okay.
This is my second season. I was successful last year, so that was a win for me. And then this year I didn't care as much. They are growing, but I'm not putting as much attention into them. This year I focused on tackling ranunculus.
Ooh.
Oh my gosh.
I have seen some very avid gardeners struggle.
No, they're beautiful.
Are they?
I had a really good experience.
Oh, good.
And
because,
I can officially say ranunculus is my favorite anything to grow.
Is
They
it?
were abundant and beautiful, and I just like was in awe. My eyes are tearing up because I'm so excited thinking about them. It was just like, it was amazing. But
I'm
you
so
do
good
have
to
to grow
hear.
them for corms.
Okay.
Yeah, so they don't grow from seed. You grow them from corms, and you want to start them a little bit earlier inside just because our season's a little tight for them.
Yeah.
But I found them easy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've heard a different story from, but also now that I'm thinking about that, that was in Muskoka, which is
Yes.
a different climate than here.
Yeah, it's very different.
And the soil is totally different.
Much different.
Oh my goodness. It's a struggle sometimes.
Yeah.
And we're very lucky in Southern Ontario.
So we're lucky in Brantford and Brant County.
Yeah.
Right, we have pretty sandy soil. I grew up in Haldeman, where like the only thing you can grow is corn and soybeans. There's no other options because it's very clay based.
Yes.
Here in Brantford and Brant County, for folks listening, we have a really sandy soil.
Yeah.
In some areas, it's pretty loamy. There's a lot of tobacco grown here, ginseng, things like that. In Muskoka, you're now entering
rocks.
you're entering the Canadian Shield. So it doesn't even matter what the soil quality is because it's very difficult to grow anything in ground. And this is actually why
It's so shady too.
Yes, because there's trees everywhere.
Yep.
So maybe for folks who aren't even in Southern Ontario, the reason why all of our agriculture has been pushed so far south is because pretty much past Muskoka, it's too rocky to actually be able to cultivate anything and have an agriculture industry. So yeah, anything grown in Muskoka, like kudos to you. I'm praying for you and I'm so sorry.
A lot of people have moved to greenhouses.
Yeah. And raised garden beds and stuff like that. Yeah.
So
And their climate's slightly colder. I think
Yeah.
they're one growing zone under us. So it's like maybe two. They might even be in like zone 4. I don't
think
know. I'll
it
look it
depends on
up and
how
I'll put
far
it in.
north you go.
Yeah.
I looked this up, and Muskoka's growing zone appears to be 4B, which is actually a little bit chillier than I thought. So, yeah, have fun growing in Muskoka.
Like I know that North Bay is a different growing zone.
Chilly.
yeah.
I go camping in Algonquin all the time.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Like I was at Killbear Provincial Park in middle of June, and I was like 4 degrees overnight.
Yep.
And it's only like 4 hours north.
Yep. And not to mention the bugs.
Oh yeah.
The bugs are wild. But I think that's too is it's more of like a foraging area for medicinal plants. It's great for that. And berries do really well up there.
Yes, this is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, acidic, sandy soil. And some of these plants, like they don't get super deep, right? Their root systems aren't super deep. So you mentioned here at the garden, you guys have had potentially some sort of amber beetle, which we're going to investigate after this.
Yeah.
Anything else that's come up that you've really struggled with? And you can say no.
I think it's mostly just like the accessibility issue is something that I would really like to have to address in the future. It's something that I personally am really focused on for this garden here, just so that not only our participants and their families can, engage with the garden more, but even our surrounding communities. I think accessible gardening is something I'm really passionate about for Brantford in general because of just the population here. I think would really benefit from raised garden beds, smooth pathways, easy access water sources, just so that everyone can engage in gardening because it has so many, not only just the obvious benefits of food production, but just well-being in general. It's a very textile, sensory experience, which benefits a lot of people mentally. And to have access to those spaces, I think is something that we should really focus on as a community, just considering our like economic climate and everything like that. I think so in terms of barriers, I'm not solely thinking of myself in that way. I'm trying to think as a collective, the barrier of just accessibility to gardening is something that I would love to address in the near future.
What a good segue. I wanted to know if there was any accessibility considerations that should be taken into spaces that are publicly accessible like this for folks that may have mobility concerns. When we think about gardens, oftentimes we're thinking about in-ground, we're thinking about maybe 12-inch raised garden beds, but at the end of the day, that's just simply not accessible for every person. And I'm wondering if you're willing to delve into a little bit on what considerations can be, or what actions can be put in place to help kind of bridge those gaps.
Yeah, it's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. Pathways is a huge concern because a lot of community gardens are surrounded by grassy areas or are on gravel paths, which is just not practical for those with mobility devices, wheelchairs, people who require any kind of assistive device in mobility, or even just if you think about the elderly. I think pathways is definitely a barrier. Raised garden beds, like you said, oftentimes they're just not, if you think about your standing height or if someone is in a wheelchair, they're not able to bend over even if it is a raised garden bed. It'd be nice to have beds that are, I'm trying to think of level, height
like
level.
at your chest level.
Yeah, exactly.
So that, or even a little lower. Whereas even like we have some 22-inch beds, and even those are like, there's still some level of hinging at the hips in order to get to that bed. And that's just simply not everybody's ability. And also same with seniors and things like that, bending down for long periods of time just is not conducive to accessibility, right?
Yeah, or even maintenance.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're thinking of accessibility of, people participating in gardening, you also have to think about what kind of maintenance it takes. So wooden garden beds, they need to be replaced. They need to, there are things that need to be considered within that. Is that something that everyone can do? And when you think about like affordability, it would be lovely to have, stainless steel raised garden beds. Is that affordable for everyone? No.
Yeah, absolutely. Jill, I have a few quote rapid fire questions if you're comfortable.
Give them to me.
All right. What is one thing you dislike about gardening?
That's a hard one. I dislike that not everyone wants to do it with me.
Oh,
I don't want to be by myself. I want people to join me. And they're like, I don't want to wake up at 5 a.m.
Oh, you're a 5 a.m. gardener.
I am. I'm a morning person. I want to have like a hobby farm that like my long-term personal goal would to be have chickens. I want to have a little pig and I want to turn my fence into an aquaponics gardening system.
You're a farmer at heart.
I am a farmer at heart, living in a city. It's mostly just trying to get people on board with the work part.
Well, I mean, I don't know how big your lot is, but I live also in the city, and I have ducks, I have a pond, I have fish, I can do aquaponics. It's like in total with the house, it's like a 200-foot lot, maybe by 90 across. Like we built a shop at the back too. Like it's not a massive space, but I just have a supportive partner. So that's the first priority, finding a husband that will follow your crazy dreams.
And my husband is that person for me.
Beautiful.
But he's currently finishing up school and everything. So it's like a wait thing, once we figure out, financial stability and everything like that, then that's something we can do later on.
Yeah, that's a plan.
Yeah.
Do you have any gardening goals this season in your own personal garden?
Like I said, with our hot pepper plants, I'm just really hoping that they turn out because I want some good hot sauce this year.
Oh, I'm so excited for you.
Yeah. And again, like just my daughters, they want to have they want to do a weekend of like a makeshift restaurant. So they were like, I want to do a lemonade stand, but I want it to be salads.
Oh, I love it.
So
oh my gosh.
That's something I want to do.
What's your favorite vegetable to eat?
And my instinct is zucchini. And then all I can hear is Wiley in the background. Wiley is my daughter saying, zucchini is a fruit.
Okay, sorry. What's your favorite fruit to eat?
Zucchini.
Zucchini.
I love ratatouille.
Oh.
I love, and the fact that
The
I
movie
can,
or the dish?
both.
Oh, perfect.
I'm obsessed. I make everyone watch Ratatouille on my birthday.
Aw.
My family is French or like Quebecois, like francophone. I'm the most English out of all of my siblings, but Ratatouille is my go-to. I love it. It's a Parisian dish, obviously, but it's considered a peasant dish. But for me, it is luxury.
That's like straight from the garden.
It is. It's everything from the garden.
Yeah.
It's your tomatoes, your zucchini, your squash, your eggplant.
Yeah,
Like it's
literally
everything
you
that.
can grow all that here.
And those are my favorites.
What's your favorite vegetable to grow? Or fruit. It can be a fruit too.
Can it be herbs?
Yeah.
Basil.
Nice. I love it.
I
It's super
love basil.
abundant, right?
It is, and it's fragrant, and you can use it for so many things.
Are there any vegetables or fruits that you do not like?
I find like the lettuce family
Okay.
super annoying because it bolts.
Oh, yeah. And then it doesn't taste good.
It doesn't,
No.
and I just find a hard balance with it. So like kale, Swiss chard, lettuce, I find them annoying.
Hey, I wanted to give you some information about what the process of bolting actually looks like, and most plants going to seed. So you can really see this happening with any type of greens, lettuce. It happens with spinach, radish. Can happen with carrots too. Essentially, the plant shoots up and becomes very tall very suddenly. That main stem will shoot right up. And if you actually taste the foliage or the fruit of whatever you're trying to eat, it's suddenly going to taste terrible. If you ever in a community garden and you see lettuce that has suddenly become very tall, I dare you to pick a little piece of the leaf off and put it in your mouth. Don't swallow it. You're going to regret it. It's the taste is very unique. It's very bitter. It's not going to hurt you or anything. There's just a reason that once a plant goes to seed or a plant bolts, we typically stop harvesting from that plant. So anyways, this happens a lot, especially in heat, but something signals to the plant that it's time to make seeds. It's time to reproduce. So that plant suddenly shoots right up. Everything on it gets bitter because it wants to deter any pests or any critters or even humans from consuming the foliage, so it can put energy into the flowers. So it'll shoot up really quick. It'll put on your little like yellow flower pods. The flowers will open up. The pollinators come and they pollinate the plant. And then for lettuce in particular, greens, kale, spinach, radish, it takes forever. But it'll eventually put on long branches and seed pods. And then once those seed pods dry out, you can harvest the seed. However, this takes up a lot of real estate in your garden. We try not to do it anymore in the community gardens because, again, we have, really prime real estate. But if you have an opportunity to just leave those plants in your garden and watch them produce seeds, it's really fascinating. But anyways, that's kind of a quick overview of bolting, which means the plant is going to produce seed.
Is there any vegetables that you don't like to eat or anything like that?
No.
No? You like them all?
All of them.
Oh, I'm so happy for you. And then one last question, and I don't think you're going to be able to answer this because we already talked about, but what's one thing you struggle with in the garden? Okay, this can be just general experience your whole life. I mean, you just mentioned lettuce, kale, Swiss chard.
I think it's just finding that balance of time because a lot of it is just waiting, right?
Yep.
So sometimes, if I get very busy in my personal life, like I keep checking on these tomatoes because I don't want them to, ripen and I miss it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like this actually happened with my strawberries this year where I saw that they were growing, they were starting to ripen, and I was so ready to pick them. And then I got really busy for a couple of days and I checked on them and they were rotten.
Yeah.
So I think it's just the balance of time.
Yeah, like
that I
carving
struggle
out
with.
a small piece every single day to go out and take care of your immediate concerns.
Yeah.
I also heavily struggle with this to the point now where I've pre-scheduled certain times in the year where I'm like, on this day, I will be canning all of my tomatoes and nobody can stop me. You know what I mean? Because I struggle with the same thing.
Oh, and the tomato canning is a whole process because you got to blanch them. I remember this one time we were blanching tomatoes, pounds and pounds of tomatoes. Yeah. And it like our house got too hot. We all got heat exhaustion. It was a whole process.
Oh, no. Yes. This is a problem. I'm working on getting a portable, safe portable burner for outside, so I can do it
nice.
outside. But you have to be careful because a lot of them are rated too high, specifically for pressure canning.
Yeah.
But for that same reason, because my house just gets too hot.
Oh, it gets so hot.
Oh, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you for
This
having
was
me.
Such a lovely conversation.
I hope that we can continue this conversation because I feel like you and I have a lot in common.
I feel like we could talk until the world fell down.
I do. I saw so many people come by the window and be like, "Are they still here in the same spot?" And I'm like, "You have no idea. We could be here forever.
We could be here forever."
Yeah,
I agree. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
So grateful.
And I'm looking forward to the future.
Yeah, me as well.
I'm back. Thank you, Jill. So much for sitting down and chatting with me. I really, really hope we get to revisit this conversation in a future part 2. So at the end of every episode, I want to debunk a myth or a misconception in the garden. And with the work that I do, I hear a lot of recommendations that, while may be suitable for some gardens or some folks, I want to chat about what some of those recommendations may look like. I know that every garden is trial and error, and there's a million ways to grow, and there's also a million factors that can affect how you grow. But I still want to provide some advice that might help you save some time. So for today's little debunking, I want to chat about dried eggshells in the garden for fertilizer. So this is one that I hear everywhere, and it is a great idea as long as people understand how that works. So oftentimes, when you hear people talking about blossom end rot, which is when the bottom of your tomato starts to turn black, they'll say, "Oh, it needs more calcium. You need to crush up your used eggshells and put them in the garden." Yes, but that nutrient actually isn't going to be available to that plant now for about 2 years because it hasn't broken down properly. So blossom end rot happens usually when there's inconsistent watering, which causes nutrient deficiencies. Oftentimes, yes, calcium. And when you are amending your soil to put your tomatoes into, purchasing bone meal or purchasing an amendment that has calcium directly in it that can be used in the soil immediately, I'll always recommend. You also can put eggshells in there, but there's a very important process that any raw food item or compostable item has to go through before plants can take up those nutrients. It needs to be composted first. It needs to rot. It needs to get up to a really hot temperature and fully break down with the help of organisms so that those nutrients now can become available to the plant. There's very few nutrients out there, like raw materials, that are immediately bioavailable to a plant. That includes duck poop and fish poop. But I mean, you would never go to a farm and ask for fresh manure that was just dropped. You always want to make sure that manure has rotted properly or it's been composted properly. So you can absolutely go ahead and put crushed eggshells into your garden. It's probably going to help with the microbiology of that soil, but just keep in mind that it's not going to help your situation in that moment. And those eggshells are going to have to break down with the help of the organisms in the soil before those nutrients become available to the plant. So it's probably not going to benefit the soil that year. It'll probably benefit the soil the following year. So this is something I hear all the time, and I feel bad correcting because it's something that circulates social media all the time. And I love the idea. Let's absolutely do everything we can to keep our food waste out of the landfill system and to try to reuse what we have. I'm a huge environmental person, so I love this idea. But just be aware, it's not going to help your situation in that moment. If you have blossom end rot in the moment, I would recommend ensuring that you are regularly watering your plants. And when I say regular, I don't mean every day or twice a day. I just mean however your watering schedule is, just make sure it's consistent. And if you are having nutrient deficiencies, considering fertilizing your plant with some sort of preferred food plant fertilizer. So that's your little tip for today. I hope that, helps you out a little bit. So thank you again to the City of Brantford and the Brant Community Foundation for funding this podcast. And a huge thank you to our board of directors for letting me run with this project. The Community Garden Podcast is administered by us, Equal Ground Community Gardens, and you can view this episode's show notes at thecommunitygardenpodcast.ca. That also connects directly to our main website, so you can search around and learn more about us. Our editing is done by Matt Wilfred. And our graphic design is by Ben from All Day Breakfast. Thanks to our lovely podcast committee, Paulina, Charlene, and Kat, for all of your hard work. I have loved working with you. And we will see you folks in the garden next week.